Rolling?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So, today we're going to talk about sensory integration. I'm seeing problems with most of the kids I work with. Just about every kid that I work with, other than some learning disabilities, are going to have sensory integration issues. Kind of a broad term, real generic, but as it applies to most of the kids that we work with that are dealing with emotional problems, attention issues, behavioral problems, I'm going to find issues with sensory integration. And how much of an issue that is going to be different for every kid. It could be their crutch. It could be the thing that makes or breaks their success, or it could be something more trivial. But when it comes to sensory integration issues, it can cause or contribute to sensory processing disorder. It can cause or contribute auditory processing disorder. A close cousin to that, or cousins to that, are misophonia and hyperacusis, where people are super sensitive to certain sounds, or the most benign sounds will set them over the edge. For people with hyperacusis, it's just the fact that they hear everything in almost an amplified manner. And it will contribute or cause, more along the lines of contribute, let me state that correctly, autism. It'll contribute to ADHD and emotional issues, which I'll get into more here in a second. So when children are having sensory integration issues, the big thing that we have to look at here in the office is at the base of this poorly drawn pyramid is tactile input and proprioception. Those are the big sensory inputs into the brain. Sight, sound, smell, and taste are very important, but at the foundation of the pyramid, if you will, is tactile input, again, kind of a generic term, and proprioception. Proprioception is our unconscious bodily awareness of where our body is in space. Thomas Edison was way ahead of his time. He actually said, this is really dorky, but he actually said that it's the job of the body to carry the brain around. Without movement, we don't have a good functioning brain. And part of the movement piece is the unconscious awareness of where our body is in space. For tactile input, this includes touch, anything, clothes on your skin, someone touching you, vibration, two-point discrimination. This is where gravesthesia issues and stereoagnostic issues come into play for kids. But at the very heart of having any sensory integration issues is how well does the brain integrate tactile and proprioception. So there's two pieces to sensory integration, or with all sensations, whether it's tactile and proprioception, sight, sound, smell, taste, it all has to go up into the brain and it's going to get registered and processed. So it's one thing for all of the sensation to go up, but then from there, what gets done with it is where the problems are coming with these children. So it has to get processed. This is where we can get sensory processing disorders, for instance. So the information goes up and then the brain has to sort it out. It has to see what's important, what's not important. Is this life-threatening? Is it not life-threatening? Big deal, small deal. It's gonna take all the information and do something with it. So there's the input piece, and then what do you do with it piece. And most importantly, how this integrates into the brain is really important for children that are dealing with long days at school, long days at practice, whatever it might be, because these are the kids with sensory integration issues that come home and they just kind of vomit everything all over you. They're done holding it in, so they just fall apart. They're going to yell, they're going to scream, they're going to bite their siblings' heads off. And to a degree, that is actually not a bad thing. The fact that they can hold it together at school or out in public is a good sign. That's a good sign of maturity. It's better than falling apart out in public. So that's really good, relatively speaking. But they're having a hard time because they have essentially a demand of, let's say, here to here to get through their day, but their brain can only handle here to here. So by the time they get home, they've already filled this capacity and we're asking way too much of them. So With sensory integration, it's that constant barrage of information that's getting sorted out throughout the brain that they can't handle, so by the end of the day, they fall apart on you. Now, really important is how it all gets sorted out in the brain. When we're looking at a side cut of a brain, this is a front piece of the brain. This is the right half of the brain. The brain has a map of the body. Kind of getting in depth, but super important to understand. When it comes to looking at particularly the right brain, where all of this information is sorted out, all of your sensory input gets sorted out in the right brain, which is our emotional brain. What's really key is that the inside of the brain right here is where we have the feet and the legs. This is where our feet and legs are mapped in the brain. This is where any information as it pertains to our feet and our legs gets processed. Well, it happens to be that all of these inside structures, as it pertains to feet and legs, also talk to other inside or medial structures. Other inside and medial structures in the brain are our limbic structures. Poor marker here. Limbic as in emotional structures. Emotional structures talk to other structures that will potentially contribute to emotional problems. Medial structures talk to medial structures. So a lot of times these kids have sensory integration issues or lack of coordination issues with their feet and their legs. And this is what has to get hashed out. They can't process touch and vibration and 2-point discrimination very well. Or they can't balance very well, or they just have poor coordination with their feet. They might be poor athletes. So we have to get this hashed out, so then all of their sensory integration problems can start going away. I think that's it. I hope we hit it. Amanda, did we get it?
I think so, yeah. Maybe a little bit more on the emotional issues. Did you hit, you didn't hit tons on that.
No, I guess going back to the emotional issues, sorry, super impromptu today. With the emotional issues, again, neurologically, I'm going to find issues with how they process information and how they perform any motor activity with their feet and their legs. This is going to give rise to a lack of proper input being fed into their limbic system. So then therefore these kids come home, they fall apart, they're 0 to 100 behavior, they're all over the place. So if we can start hashing out how they coordinate their feet and their legs, can we increase their input capability of touch, 2-point discrimination, vibration, fine touch? Can we increase that input? Can we give them stimulation so that they have better input going into their limbic systems and they're less 0 to 100, they're more 0 to 50? Can they go until 8 o'clock at night before falling apart, as opposed to 5 o'clock after ball practice and after school? Can they go the entire week without issues? But the whole thing that we have to do, again, is find out, relatively speaking, do they have a lack of input here? If they do, then we want to increase that input appropriately for the child. And relatively speaking, it's compared to their hands and their arms. So if they have really good hand-eye coordination, they may not have what's called hand and feet coordination. People call it other things, but if we can increase the input here, again, then the emotional pieces of these kids goes away.
Got it.